There's this story out of the Dominican Republic that's gotten a little bit of international press I thought was interesting and I wanted to talk about. And that is that Dominican officials, or the Dominican Republic has, kicked out 9 or 10 Cuban officials and their families, I think with a 7-day window, and they left right away. Really interesting. And what I want to talk about today is less the politics. We'll start with that. Why this happened, or at least what we know of why this happened. And then, honestly, I really want to speak more to the investor / person moving here about what I think this is a signal of, just to be clear on all of that. Again, my take on that last part. But here's the story. Cuba has 9 or 10 officials here with their families. And yesterday, out of seemingly nowhere, the Dominican Republic, without any sort of explanation as to why, told these people that they need to leave. And they did. I think I saw a report where they were gone within maybe an hour of that coming out. There was no reason given. However, from talking to some people and getting some sense of it, it sounds like the biggest, it has to be rumor at this point, the biggest rumor about why is that there was some sort of surveillance or spying operation potentially in country by the Cuban government, and that's what got them kicked out. Now, that may not be crazy, again, all alleged, because I believe the same thing happened in Ecuador earlier this year. Cuban nationals were banished from Ecuador. Cuban government officials were banished from Ecuador. Sorry, trying to get out of my thing here. And for the same reason, apparently there was some sort of spying operation or whatever. And Colombia recently said the same, that they're ready to kick Cuba out of Colombia with the new administration coming in. And, again, my language might not be the exact thing. People get nuts on kicked out. You get my point. There's pressure on Cuba between the Dominican Republic making the officials leave, Colombia saying they will, and Ecuador having done that earlier this year. But again, we don't know exactly why. Now, what's interesting to me about this is the knee-jerk, especially for the people online that have absolutely no solutions. All they do is spout out problems and just drop big statements. Oh, this is what this is what that is. And the biggest one you hear right now is, the whim of the United States. So here's what's real about that. Yeah, the United States is the superpower of the region, and all of these countries are aligned with it because they represent the U.S. The majority of the economic progress in all of these countries, DR notwithstanding, tourism, agriculture, imports, exports, everything funnels through the U.S. And the Dominican Republic has long been a partner with the United States, and even more so recently is aligning with what's known as the Donroe Doctrine. Monroe Doctrine redone, which is, hey, we're the U.S., the West is our turf. Russia, China, the East is your turf. Stay out. But China's not out. China's all over right now, Latin America. But Latin America, elections in El Salvador, in Argentina, in Colombia recently, have all skewed more toward what Americans would say right-wing politicians. Again, different politics in different countries, but definitely aligned with Trump. And there are 13, 14 countries in this conglomerate called the Shield of the Americas, Latin American countries that are aligned with the current U.S. administration's agenda and objectives. And they all get together and agree, hey, we're going to support one another in fighting narco-terrorism and so on and so forth. So is kicking Cuban officials out the whim of the United States? I think it's more than that. Definitely the U.S. has influence here, even if it's not direct. I don't believe that one day, somebody got a call in the Abinader administration and said, hey, you know what? Just because it's Tuesday and it's slow, kick Cuba out. I don't think that happened. I think something happened with Cuba that made the DR government upset, angry, annoyed, maybe a little bit suspicious, whatever it might be. And it's like, look, this is Cuba. Even if we're suspicious, kick them out. Our top partner, the United States, is not going to have a problem with that. I guess I wonder if it was El Salvador or Argentina being accused of whatever Cuba is being accused of, if that same action would have happened, or if there would have been discussion, or if we never would have heard about it. So definitely the U.S. has influence in the decision to expel Cuban officials from the Dominican Republic, but I don't see it as DR or the U.S. just decided to tell DR to make Cubans get out. That to me is intellectually dishonest. But what it does say as an investor, and again, the politics aside, as an investor or a buyer or somebody moving here, the Dominican Republic has clearly delineated themselves or considered themselves. You can't tell I'm doing this without editing, so you're going to get the words you get. They've considered themselves a capitalistic, open market, free market, democratic society, very much like the United States. For a lot of people, that means that DR is being taken over by the United States. There's even a video out recently about the U.S. is going to invade DR. Anyway, it comes across to a lot of people like, oh, the DR is just becoming the U.S. The DR is trying to become the best version of a free market, capitalistic, democratic society that it can. And the example that it uses for sure is the United States. Does that mean it wants to become the United States, or that the United States is saying do this or else? I don't know, but I don't think so. But because because Dominican Republic is leaning further and further into Western principles, if you will, that means it's leaning closer and closer, or further and further into strong property rights. It's leaning further into an open business or pro-business environment. It means it's leaning more into, oh, I got a car here, there we go. It means it's leaning more into foreign investment funneling into the country, trade, zona francas, even, and it's controversial, I know, even data centers, even rare earth minerals or rare earth materials. All of that stuff is where DR is seeing its assets and then deciding that it wants to participate in the open capitalistic economy that is the West, that is Western values. I don't even know if that makes sense what I just said, but it makes sense in my brain. So you guys will get it. You can always comment and tell me where you think I'm wrong. So that's what I see this as. I don't see this as DR is doing what the U.S. wants them to do. I think DR is doing something to a country that it doesn't see the value of the relationship in, because that country did something to prompt DR to take action. And by doing that, for sure, they're saying, okay, this is actually a good thing according to our key partner, which is the United States. Here's the thing. This is my general position on how this all works. Dominican Republic cannot operate on its own if it wants to continue to grow its economy. And the Dominican Republic, despite the wishes of many, can't be left alone. Meaning, if people think DR needs to be what it was 30, 40 years ago, culturally, the culture is amazing, and I hope that stays. But economically, a country can't, it's like anything. You either grow or you're dying. That's it. You grow or you die. It's like hair. Your hair grows, and if it's not growing, then it's dead. Same with economies, same with countries. And the Dominican Republic is very aware of that. Too many people I hear, and maybe it's, I'd love to hear from the people that are like, yeah, that's ridiculous. Too many people think that DR is supposed to be just left alone, nothing should happen, da-da-da-da. I don't disagree with those that say, hey, look, you got to be careful about, U.S. interest overwhelming the Dominican Republic. But I think the Dominican Republic would do well for itself to leverage its relationship and leverage the large economy that's funneling a lot of money down here, and then build for its citizens. And a lot of people doubt they will, but that's the best use of the economy here in the Dominican Republic. So my point is simply, you are not going to stop progress. I think that's a fool's errand. I think that's silly. Dominican Republic is committed to progress. Some people would say, oh, it's all these Americans coming down. It's like, no, DR has said, look, we want to be and participate in a capitalistic society. We want to participate in a democratic society. We want what the West has. We want to do the same thing the way we want to do it. And they're going to do that. I mean, I don't know. The example I use real quick is I love Kobe Bryant. Kobe wanted to become the best basketball player he could be. His inspiration was Michael, but he didn't want to be Michael. Some people say he did, but no, he didn't want to be Michael. He's comparative to Michael, but he wasn't Michael. He was different. What Kobe learned over time was cooperation is better than isolation. When he had Shaq is like the U.S., right? The big brother, if you will. When he had Shaq, meaning economically, that's all I mean. When he had Shaq was winning championships with him. And then when he rode Shaq out of town, it was way harder to find the kinds of partners that he needed. And it took him way more effort to overcome and win 2 more championships. They were spaced apart. Imagine if Shaq never left LA. They would have gone on probably a run of 5, 6, 7 championships. Who knows? I mean, who knows? The point I'm making is Kobe wanted to be the best player he could be in basketball. He needed to collaborate with others in order to be the best version of himself. And DR is sort of saying the same thing. I don't think DR is saying we want to be the US. They're inspired by the economy of the United States. And they're saying we want to be the best version of DR within this capitalistic, democratic society. And we need help from the 7'3" pivot that is Shaquille O'Neal. And in this world, that's the United States. So that's how I see this. That's how I read the Cuba thing. Maybe I'm reading too far into it. I don't know. You let me know. But all I'm saying, if I'm summarizing this, is it happened. We don't know exactly why. I don't think it's the U.S. saying kick them out. I think there's something that happened in DR. All they needed was a little to expel Cuba in order to align themselves with the United States. There's definitely, we all know, the U.S. in general and this administration in general definitely want what they want. And if the DR is smart enough to say, okay, we know what they want, let's give them this, they'll do it. And then I see it as a further and further leap for DR into capitalism and further into a democratic society, into promoting democratic principles, which to me, again, means stronger property rights in the future. It means a stronger business climate. It means attracting more foreign direct investment. I could have just said that. But hey, you rode along with me. It was a lot of fun. Let me know what you think. Drop it down below. I'll drop this on for a Saturday afternoon little YouTube video, and we'll go from there. Appreciate y'all.